Shanti. And good evening. Welcome to Raj Yoga Essentials, where we get to really try to connect with the foundation of the spiritual self-transformative study. So we always like to begin with a bit of a reflection so that our inner space is in a spiritual space. I invite you to be seated comfortably, but as we say, in a bit of a royal way. So very engaged. And one can experiment with eyes open in a natural, unforced way, very natural. But even though the physical eyes are open, my vision is definitely turning inwards, focusing on something else. We call it our mind's eye or inner eye, insight. And that inner eye is trying to discern what is invisible, not physical, but quite impactful in my life, bringing form and understanding around my thoughts and feelings and perspectives, why I do the things I do, why I think the way I do. This sense that quality of life depends far more on what's going on inside of me than what's going on around me, outside. And so turning my vision inwards, deep inside, with the attitude to understand. Om Shanti. So these sessions are very interesting right now because they, of course, are occurring in the context of an interesting time in the world. So it's a time of great transformation in the world, a lot of change. And so something that's really striking me about Raj Yoga, this practice, we call it a transformation practice. Its intention is to transform the self. It really needs to feel relevant to what's going on at this time. As if, how do I respond to these times? And it seems like a relevant response. Lines of, things might appear to be falling apart, but actually they might be falling together. And I just keep feeling about what is time signaling to us. It might appear that things are falling apart and, there might be a strong pull to want to go back to normal. But it might be possible as well that what is going on around us is really inviting us to look at what's going on inside of us. The principle, the essence of Raj Yoga is captured in the slogan of the organization. When I change, the world changes. And I know that's not a new thought, um, but to really live loyal to that slogan requires a lot of resources and support, a lot of wisdom and power, which is really what Raj Yoga is designed to do, is to give that wisdom and power. So I guess first I have to recognize, which I think the current times are inviting, I really have to realize that when I change, the world changes. So it's not until some kind of change happens within myself that if there is any sorrow or peacelessness I'm experiencing, it's not going to be about changing things outside. That won't change until I do. And since we might be hesitating in getting that message, it feels like things around us are falling apart, so that we are all we'll be left with is to look at ourselves. So very relevant, this idea of really looking at myself and what kind of transformation needs to happen in me. When we say things falling apart, Raj Yoga asks us to examine the formula by which we live our lives. And as things seem to change around us, we might realize that formula isn't really stable. And the formula we often live by is only when things around me change will I change. So I can't be happy until ... something outside changes, until this person does that thing I want them to do, or that situation changes, or I get that. Some kind of desire is usually motivating us, and it's usually outside of us. So we really are trying to control things outside to feel happy. And so it's kind of interesting is in these times when we seem to be losing control, that formula just isn't practical. It's just not feasible anymore because we have no control. So that's a bit of a blessing in the sense that it's sort of shining light on this idea. I need to really look at this formula I'm living by. You know, if I think that it is the formula for happiness and peace, it might really be drawn into question at this time. So rather than feeling, if only I could change things out there, then my feelings will change. The current times are really pulling us to ask, maybe I can't rely on things out there for my feelings to change. Maybe my feelings of peace and happiness need to be generated from inside. I was remembering this morning a story, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this story, the Queen's necklace. And in this story, the Queen has a favorite necklace, which she seems to wear quite often, if not daily. And she keeps it in the same box, jewel box, in her room. And so every day she can go to the jewel box, the necklace is in there, and if she chooses to, she can wear it. But she wakes up one day and looks in the jewel box and it's empty. A little bit of panic, right? The thing that she wants to do, right? She can't do that. Source of happiness, that necklace is not there. And so in panic, oh my goodness, the thing that makes me happy isn't there. She starts to kind of tear the room apart, has her servant come in and help her tear the room apart, looking for this source of happiness, this necklace. They don't find it. So then she starts to recruit the whole staff, and they tear the palace apart. Man, they don't find it. And she's really panicking. This thing that gives her a source of happiness, she can't find it. And so she issues a decree to the entire kingdom that everyone must look far and wide for this necklace. And even thinking maybe someone took the necklace, snatched away this necklace, which is her source of happiness. And so everyone, throwing the whole kingdom into a state of disarray, looking for the necklace. And finally, one bold soul comes forward and says, I have found the necklace. And she's quite relieved and expecting him to, reveal the necklace. And he says, actually, it's around your neck. And of course, the idea being that the thing that we are seeking outside and really trying to control everyone and making it happen, the thing we're seeking outside is actually closer than we think and actually is within us. So the term inner peace is that way for a reason. Inner happiness is something inside of me. And so, as things fall apart, we can't seem to manipulate things outside in the way that makes us happy. It's really, again, the blessing of pointing towards looking inside for a very stable source of happiness, which is what every human soul wants. And that's where Raj Yoga comes in. So I find it very relevant right now. If one chooses, is open to facing that. And what does it really explore, Raj Yoga? This idea that within me, there is a capacity for peace and happiness which nothing and no one can snatch away. Sounds really good. So, how is that going to happen? Back to the wisdom and the power required. At the essence of the study is a very different understanding, which we call spiritual understanding. For peace and happiness to be of a form that cannot be snatched away, it cannot be emerged from or depend on anything that is temporary, anything that is subject to change, which means it can't be physically based. So, by saying that my peace and happiness depends on the outer or physical world, it automatically becomes quite vulnerable, subject to change. The outer world is in constant change. That's the rule of physicality, constantly changing. So, my peace and happiness needs to be based on something constant, unchanging, or eternal, timeless. And that's where spirituality steps in. That's a speciality of spirituality. It's based on what is eternal or timeless, not physical. And that begins with the self, having a spiritual understanding of myself, of others, and of the entire world. Once I have that understanding of myself, it really follows very naturally, understanding others and the world around me. So, is my understanding of myself based on physical or temporary things? Well, if I think I am the body, if I think I am relationships around me, or positions, or roles, or responsibilities, then the answer is yes. My sense of self is based on temporary things because all of the things that just was listed are all temporary, external, based on the physical. This body is temporary. It does have a fixed term in this state, and relationships come and go. And this is not to say that spirituality is mutually exclusive from relationships. And once you start to study Raj Yoga, you start to understand the true meaning of relationship. But it is to say that my sense of self, if it's defined by relationships with other people or things or roles, and those are constantly changing, then it's a very unstable sense of self, very fragile. So it is possible to have relationships with others and to fulfill roles and responsibilities, but my sense of self is not dependent on those things. It's quite a shift in thinking, in paradigm. Raj Yoga explores a very eternal, non-physical sense of self. And even when we start to just touch that, be open to experiencing that, we immediately start to feel an inner experience of peace rather than my peace being dependent on a beautiful scene in nature or nice music or certain things going the way I want in the day. This very different quality of peace that comes from an experience of the eternal. Our experiences of peace have become so dependent on temporary or physical things. This experience of peace from an eternal source is extremely sweet and unique. So imagine having this very eternal experience of the self, and immediately it's like a light switch. I get to taste this unique form of true inner peace. So let's experiment with that right now. So, sitting comfortably, that feeling we get as we sit here when we go to, say, watch TV or watch a film, that we are very alert, engaged, ready to have an experience, this time from an outer source. I sit here with that same feeling, preparing to have an experience, but it's going to be generated from inside. And so I turn my attention inwards onto the screen of my own mind. My mind is so powerful. It can create thoughts, and those thoughts can shape what I feel, what I experience. The thoughts in my mind over time have been shaped by the outer world, by my understanding of physicality. As I sit here now, deliberately creating thoughts that are based on what is eternal, spirituality, or truth. One of the most powerful thoughts my mind can create is the truth about myself. I bring those thoughts onto the screen of my mind. The truth is, I don't have a soul. The truth is, I am a soul. I am an eternal being. I am life itself. And I am not physical. I, the soul, am separate from this body. This body in its current form is perishable, and I am imperishable. I am the thinker, the observer, the actor, the experiencer, the expressor in this body. I am an invisible and yet very real entity, a tiny spark of light, seeing myself on the screen of my own mind, very delicate, subtle being. Just a point, invisible. And yet I feel my own presence. I do exist. I'm just not physical. I am energy, living energy, thinking energy, feeling energy. And when I am fully self-aware, in this form of point, aware I am a soul, a sense of calm comes over me. A deep sense of peace from within, an eternal form of peace based on nothing of this world. As if I am peace. I am a source of peace. The very thing I've been seeking in the physical world is actually what I am. I am an eternal being, a soul, and my true nature is peace. The moment I deeply have this experience, it's as if a struggle inside ends. The hands of my mind let go. No longer a need to hold or manipulate or grasp or seek or beg in the outer world. What I wish to attain what I've been longing for has always been within me. The key to unlock it is simply to remember I am a soul. Om Shanti. This knowledge or wisdom about the self is the cornerstone of Raj Yoga. The most basic change I need to practice is a change in consciousness or self-awareness. Everything changes around that. It's like the center of the universe is that consciousness. But we also require power to sustain that consciousness as well as address all the habits that developed while I forgot myself. The habits of attaching in order to feel good, seeking or wanting in order to feel good, arrogance in order to feel good. There's so many habits we developed that really miss the mark, but they've become habits. We need power to become free from those habits. And that requires a power source. Sometimes we compare the soul to being like a rechargeable battery. When I'm fully charged, I can easily maintain the consciousness of being a soul. It's natural. It's very pure, true consciousness. But when I'm low on power, the habits of other things take over. So I need to power up to sustain spirituality as I walk and move around that integrity. And the power source is outside of me. And the power source is not other people, because they're also looking for the power source. We're all empty, if you will. And the power source is certainly not in nature. We actually are the ones who are responsible for caring for nature. For a soul, the power source will need to be spiritual. And so we look outside of the physical realm. Traditionally, intuitively, we knew that it is in silence that we get power. But what exactly is it in that silence that gives us power? Must be plugging into something. And plugging into a being, a spiritual source that has power always. And that spiritual source of constant power is the Supreme Soul, known as God in many parts of the world. This being who never forgets, who always stays in a spiritual state, that deep, deep sense of peace can be found in moments of silence. It's not that God is within us, but the memory of that being the one who resides outside of the physical. We can touch that memory, that experience when we go into silence. And silence is a state where there's no worldly thoughts, no thoughts of the temporary. The mind is so free of day to day, going into a very timeless state. So we'll end by experimenting with that journey into silence to start reconnecting with the source of power, the Supreme Soul. Again, I sit in a state of interest, and with one thought, I turn inwards. The outer world, including this physical body, starts to fade out of focus. And my inner world of thoughts and feelings becomes very vibrant. I'm acutely aware of my own presence. I am the one thinking. I can feel my presence at that place from where it feels thoughts originate, behind the forehead. I, the being, a point of life, a soul, I am operating here, behind the forehead, going inwards and feeling myself separate from the body. I am not diffused through the body. I sit here in a specific point. Inwards. And remembering I am timeless. Moving into that timeless place. Beyond this realm of sound and action. Just as astronauts launch into outer space, feel myself drawing into an inner space. Through which I can access a deep silence where I let go of everything but the awareness of myself. I, the thinker, that single point. It's like a single star in a completely dark night sky. Just the peace of holding that single thought in my mind. I, the soul. And this moves me into a silence that is ancient and eternal, a very sacred silence, a golden silence, God's world. Again on the screen of my mind, I can see that sacred being, the one remembered as the Father, of all souls. Also, a tiny, delicate point of living light. This powerful being who is so quiet, subtle, not physical, and yet their presence is so loud, so much peace radiating from the Supreme Soul. And the power of that one, not a physical power, a soft, gentle, spiritual power that cleans away any heaviness in me, the soul, smooths out the rough edges, melts away any complications. It's like filling up with the power to let go. We call it the power of purity. Because the power of purity is what sustains peace and happiness. Feels like light, this power from the Supreme Soul, filling up with light and lightness. Om Shanti. So we will conclude there because we've run out of time. I'll check in if there's any questions or comments, which you can put in the chat box. If so, and I'll just share at this time, if there is interest to learn more, we are offering the Raj Yoga course in English and Hindi actually this weekend. So I would recommend visiting our website for details on that and how to register. It's an online course, obviously. So it allows you to go into the depths of this wisdom and power that can transform us from living physically to living spiritually. If no comments or questions, we'll conclude there. And thank you for joining us. Om Shanti.